Welcome to the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Blind, and this is episode 28, season 22. I wish it was season 22. Season 2 of the Overrated Experience Sports and Sports Betting Podcast. Welcome back for those who are regular listeners. I appreciate you. I thank you. And I apologize for the absolute garbage weekend, which was week 14 of the NFL, and the picks I provided. Again, for entertainment purposes, I can't clarify that enough how bad I was this weekend. Horrible. And I got some things to say about what happened in the NFL. I just can't explain it. I don't get it. And I don't get how the handicappers are staying on top of things in regards to trends that don't turn out to be the case. New trends arise during a weekend where you just get the absolute shit kicked out of you one way or another, whether it be spreads, over-unders, and or, of course, the props, where I just was talking about how I probably should quit my job and just move on to props as my career. Reality is set in, and that was a reality check. We'll go over that. We'll talk about week 15. We'll talk about some over-unders, and we'll talk about some spreads as well. And keep in mind that we have Saturday, 3 NFL games on Saturday because of the college football season ending, and we're heading into bowl season. Saturday frees up, so there's more action there. Do not forget that. You know what? Cancel any plans you had for Saturday. I know Christmas is coming up, but football takes precedent. And speaking of football, our focus is going to be NFL. If you haven't listened to us before, we're going to talk about NFL stories. We're going to talk about NFL plays, and we're going to have a second podcast later this week to talk about props. But I don't want to limit ourselves to just football. We will talk about subjects beyond football. It just happens to be NFL season right now, so the time and effort is going to be focused on the NFL. But watch out for other shows, for other topics, for other sports, other bets, other stories. You'll see it pop up, and please tune it in. If you have been tuning in, please spread the word, get other people to tune in, and join us on Twitter/X at Overrated EXPER2. That's Overrated EXPER2. You can find it in the episode details from your podcast provider, and also Instagram and Facebook. If you type in Overrated Experience, guess what? You find us again. So hop on, and here we go. So looking back on NFL week 14, a lot of things happened that I just shake my head, double face palm. Really, really not good from my aspect. And we're going to kick it off in Detroit and Chicago. So, of course, this is one of my teasers. Took the -3 Detroit Lions and made them a +3 on my teaser. And the Lions absolutely got rinsed. All right, rinsed. And what I don't understand here is why Detroit struggles with Chicago. Yeah, you could, 2 weeks earlier, they had to make a miraculous comeback, get a win in Chicago, or in Detroit at home against Chicago, and then lay an egg here. I don't get it. The Detroit Lions, are they for real or what? Is this just a blip? Does Chicago have their number as a divisional opponent? I don't understand it. But I'm telling you, for Chicago, it's fool's gold. I mean, this is going to have you thinking twice about Justin Fields, with that first overall pick. And if Caleb Williamson finally declares himself ready for the draft, are you really going to say no to him and hold on to Justin Fields? I'm telling you, you're making a huge mistake here. He does show signs of, good weeks, poise in the pocket, but it's more often than not, he takes 2 steps back. Like, he didn't look great against the Minnesota Vikings 2 weeks earlier in that 12-10 victory. So, Chicago, don't fool yourself and into thinking you got your franchise quarterback here. And again, maybe it's not a choice if you're, drafting early first round, but you got the number 1 pick. You got Carolina's number 1 pick. And that's a franchise quarterback in Caleb Williamson. If you're wrong, you're out the door. General manager, coach, organization, done. You can't make that mistake. I'm telling you right now. So what a shit show, though, was the Detroit Lions. Everything goes wrong. It could go wrong. Went wrong there. But that was just the start of the day. We were good on the Indy Cincinnati game. Jake Browning again. big game, 270 plus yards. He did have to leave with the cramped finger of some sort. Came back. I don't think I've heard that before, but hey, he came back. Jacksonville, Cleveland. Trevor Lawrence did play. And Joey Flacco, man. I can tell you right now, Joey Flacco in his latest years in Baltimore and his time in New York and Denver. I forgot about that. Absolute trash. But, plus 300 yards. He's lighting up the statistics sheet. I didn't see Joey Flacco, Joey F, with that kind of performance. Move on to the big game here, Buffalo, Kansas City, and we got a lot to talk about in this one. First of all, Josh Allen looks amazing. Two straight games where he looks, when he's in a zone, he's almost unstoppable. He might be the most devastating quarterback. And what I mean by that is when you have him third and long, he just jacks a 15-yard pass with such ease for first downs, or runs for a big chunk, or just kills you. And you think you got him wrapped up. He had a play at the sideline where it looked like he stepped out of bounds, but clearly didn't, and got a first down. And Chaz, you have to see it to believe it. I'm sure you did see it, but that's vintage Josh Allen. When he is on, he's unstoppable. That doesn't mean you can't score 48 points to their 41. It just means offensively, almost impossible to shut him down when he's in a zone. But what happened in this game, which was the big play, is Tony, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, scores a touchdown, which you think is the go-ahead touchdown. Josh Allen's getting his helmet on, ready to go, fourth quarter comeback. And then you watch the flag. You watch the replay on the flag, and Tony lines up offside. It's clear. It's clear that he's got a foot. He's looking at the ball. Again, you can't tell his foot is a foot ahead. I said this on Twitter, about this situation. And I'll talk about Mahomes' reaction in a second. But his foot was so far of the line that if he was at the border, he was so far on the other side, he'd be considered a tourist. That's how far he was across the line, the border, aka the border. How do you make a dumbass mistake like that? And how many times have the Kansas City Chief receivers been absolutely critically destructive to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City offense? You can count and vividly remember Tony in the first game with key drops, multiple, that caused them, I'm going to say it, caused them to lose against the Lions that opening night. Key drops against Philadelphia, Scantling. Just, I can't even explain how bad they are. And then Tony to line up offside. I know I'm a Tom Brady fan, and when people say that he won with less talent around him constantly, didn't matter who was around him, that is an accurate statement. But to compare the issues going around with the receiving core with the Kansas City Chiefs and Mahomes with the ability for Brady to win with that crop of receivers year over year that the Patriots gave him, I don't think it's a fair comparison. We're talking about scenarios where there are dropped balls lining up offside. I don't know how much Patrick Mahomes can influence any change to what we've seen so far leading up to this point. They're horrible. And I didn't think it was going to be this much of a factor this far into the season, but clearly it is. So Andy Reid's got to go to the drawing board, figure out what you can't just throw to Travis Kelce. You can't. So I don't know what you do, but they got a serious problem on their hands if they have the best quarterback maybe of a generation his whole job is to put it in the hands of the folks that can catch the ball. And if they can't catch the ball, or self-destructive penalties where they're lining up offside, I don't know what to tell you. He's in trouble. But Patty Mahomes is getting ripped into his reaction. He's stuck on the storyline that he didn't think it was a big deal that the flag should be thrown, that touchdown should have stood. And I love the Shooter McGowan. If you go on Twitter, there's a Twitter space called Shooter McGowan, and playing off the Billy Madison movie. And if you want to hear this, this is what Shooter McGavin tweeted what Josh Allen should have told Patrick Mahomes at midfield yesterday. And this is after, the game's over there embracing, and Mahomes is, complaining about the play.
Come on, cry. What, are you going to cry now? Come on, cry.
So Christmas time is from the Christmas Story, I think. Sorry. Red Ryder BB gun. Now, Patrick Mahomes, he's an ultimate, he's the man. He's the man. And he does not want to throw his receivers under the bus. And I think he's trying to do everything he can to protect his team. I think he knows that this roster is not changing as they make a run again to the Super Bowl. I think he knows that, I don't think he's blind to the fact that his receiving core has let him down. I just think he's trying to be the ultimate leader and trying to bring his guys up and maybe changing the narrative. It's us against the world. They're trying to shut us down. The NFL doesn't want to see the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl, and he's trying to be a leader. I hate when people are going and looking at Patrick Mahomes as a crybaby. He's not crying any more than anybody else is. Okay? So Buzz Farkas, go to hell.
What, are you going to cry now? Come on, cry.
I'm not crying. You're crying, you bastard. Goddamn bully. Anyway, we move on. Kansas City in trouble. We head to another team that looks to be in trouble and may have a red flag here. Sunday nighter. This was a weird one. This was a strange game for me. Eagles Cowboys. I like the Eagles to at least cover the field goal. And at the time of kickoff, it was a field goal, 3.5 points. At least, I guess it was like that for the most part leading to this game. This is Eagles coming off a big loss against the 49ers. Really got pasted against the 49ers. Now, I sat here last week calling out the Cowboys as frauds. I'm going to stick to it. My definition of them being a fraud wasn't a Sunday nighter in December, their performance. It is playoff time. When it comes to crunch time, when it comes to battling one of the heavyweights, a.k.a. the 49ers, a.k.a. the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs. So the Cowboys took care of the Eagles. But let's break this down. Let's unpack this just a bit. Did anybody else not find it strange on that first touchdown drive by the Cowboys that holding call was picked up, that flag that was thrown, that should have nullified that touchdown, was picked up? When is the last time you've seen a holding where a flag was actually thrown? We're talking about an offensive lineman holding, and it was picked up, no foul in the play. There is no flag for holding. I don't care if you look at it from a perspective, if real time, you may or may not have chosen to call that play, but somebody looked at it and thought it was holding. What other angle does somebody else have that made that referee pick up that flag? That's a red flag to me. No pun intended. That was weird. That's strange. That just came out of nowhere. Surprisingly for the Cowboys. But then again, you had the Eagles consistently self-destruct. 3 fumbles. Jalen Hurts fell on his face, fumbled the ball. Just burst any momentum that the Eagles had. A.J. Brown, fumble, gets stripped. It's just unbelievable. Okay? and Devontae Smith, stripped. Any attempt to come back was done. They were down 11 points and just handed the game away. And a couple, again, more questionable flags against the Eagles. I just didn't understand the Slay one, cornerback for the Eagles, 3rd and long. He gets called for a flag for pass interference where there was, if you're going to pick up the holding call, then you should have picked up the flag for this so-called pass interference. The Cowboys are rolling. They're still frauds. And you know what? It's the same old story for this team. They look good until January. So I would hesitate. Do not put all your chips in the middle for how about them Cowboy boys? Okay? So the Cowboys, frauds. And they really, I think I got screwed over by a bit about, the referees.
What, are you gonna cry now? Come on, cry!
Shut up, Buzz Farkas. Okay, you know what also? The Eagles' turnovers were crushing. And if you notice a theme throughout the weekend, especially when you get to Monday night, turnovers from your star players are crippling. Are crippling to a bet. Okay? And we head into Monday night, and Packers, they're 6-6, easy schedule to ride out, probably make the playoffs, and and then they go and lose to the New York Giants. They lose to the New York Giants. The New York Giants. It's just unexplainable on how this is even possible that the Packers can look one way, walk into Detroit in Thanksgiving, and take out the Lions. Jordan Love looks like a seasoned quarterback. Like he's coming into his own. And then he gets outdueled by Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito. How is that possible? If you're looking at the trends, you're looking at the Lions, you're looking at past performance. Jordan Love goes into Detroit, like I said. He takes out Patrick Mahomes. Looks like he is the game slowing down for him. And then he comes out, pick here, Packers fumble here on kickoffs. And then the kicker, they go ahead by a touchdown, miss the 2-point conversion. Why they didn't keep it in Jordan Love's hand instead of a sweep left and can't get the 2-point conversion. But they didn't even force the Giants to use a timeout to march down the field before they got into field goal range, where then they used their timeouts. They were outdueled by Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito. And check Twitter anyway. Check Tommy DeVito's agent. They had clips of Tommy DeVito hanging out with his agent. And somebody made a comment online which is exactly bang on. He doesn't look like an agent. He looks like a consigliere. And if you ever watched The Godfather, you know what I'm talking about. That was from Pac Mac at Pac Mac 1382. Other players have an agent. Tommy DeVito has a consigliere. Perfect. The guy's got the little hat. Looks like he's just come from the racetrack. Probably had some inside tip on a horse. And he's come back to talk to Tommy. Give him some advice. Okay? So check it out. Giants don't get it. And the Tennessee Titans. Miami Dolphins. Man, was a 14.5 point spread, and Tennessee wins out. 2 late touchdowns. And it actually paid off where down 14, they convert the 2-point conversion right off the bat in that first try. And then that touchdown, all they have to do is kick the extra point to win the ball game, and they did it. Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins, good. They had some big plays yesterday. Big plays. And if you look back at the start of the season, people were lukewarm on DeAndre Hopkins. I know there was teams looking at him, and he was kind of visiting team here, team there. But how good would DeAndre Hopkins look in a Kansas City Chiefs uniform right now? How good would he look in a Bills uniform out of that, roster? but he looks great. Big time player. And the difference between having a Ryan Tannehill that can't get anybody the ball than to a young guy like Will Levis, at least is standing in the pocket and jacking 40-yard passes in the way of DeAndre Hopkins, there might be something there. But I'm telling you that teams undersold what D-Hop had left in the tank. And I bet you they're kicking themselves now. That's the story from week 14. I'm going to quit whining. I'm going to move on to week 15. Again, Saturday games, pay attention. And I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to take anything to do with that Thursday night game. I could care less about the LA Chargers and Easton Stick. That's right. Quarterback, LA Chargers, Easton Stick. And first of all, that's got to be a joke. Easton, last name Stick. You tell me his parents purposely or didn't know that that's the same name as a hockey stick, Easton Stick? Come on. That's ridiculous. Your parents got to be cousins somewhere. Okay? So Justin Herbert out, broken finger, needs surgery. He's done for the year. The quarterback sideline. And, we always talk about, the late hits on quarterbacks, roughing the passer. And we hate it. We see those flags every time, roughing the passer, that are, very non-NFL like, if you've watched NFL for 30 years, 40 years. But let's be honest with this, guys. Let's be totally honest. Once a team, for the most part, not every team is this, but I would say 85% of the teams lose their quarterback, their season is pretty much done. Let's be honest with ourselves. You tell me losing Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, guys like that are not game changers on a team's outlook and season potential. It makes sense. You have to protect the quarterback. I don't care if you don't like, the rule where the defender can't land his body weight, can't hit low below the knees, or they're very sensitive on late hits. Well, guess what? Then you're going to get an Easton Stick, an Easton goddamn Stick, quarterbacking a football game in a primetime Thursday nighter. Easton Stick. Protect the quarterback, man. Protect the quarterback. Protect. Throw that 15 yards every time. So nothing there on the Thursday nighter. But what I will talk about is a Saturday game. We're going to talk about Minnesota heads into Cincinnati. And key news breaking a couple hours ago. Joshua Dobbs is out and Nick Mullins is in. You had to know that the Minnesota Vikings, after the Monday nighter a few weeks back before their bye week they had against the Chicago Bears, and the 4 interceptions and probably 10 interceptions that Joshua Dobbs could have thrown, he looked absolutely horrible. Not the Joshua Dobbs that we know and love from Arizona, those first few games where he barely knew the playbook. So he's fallen off the rails. I think after the bye week, I talked about the only thing I got right was pulling the trigger on Joshua Dobbs and going to Nick Mullins, especially with a bye week to prepare for that scenario. And that's what they did in Vegas in that horrible game there. Nick Mullins in, I think he'll have an early positive effect on the Vikings. Again, Josh Dobbs did early on, but clearly something's off there. But I do think that Jake Browning, that will be back after that finger injury or finger cramp, I think he's gone. I think Zach Taylor, the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, has got the right pathway for his quarterback. He's got to get the ball to his weapons, right? And that's what he's doing. He's throwing the ball. And then Joel Mixon is running like hell. Josh Brown running back. The defenses are guessing where to protect. When you got an effective run game and 2 guys really putting up yards, you got to move up guys in the box. And what's that do? That leaves the Higgins, Boyds, and Chases of the world open for business. And what happens if you shut those guys down? Well, guess what? You go back to the run game. If those guys can be, you keep a defense guessing. I don't think it's going to change here. I mean, we just seen the Bengals knock off the Colts, quite handily. Vikings did get a win in Vegas, but by 3 points, 3-0. So I'm going to take the Bengals here at 3.5. I'm going to skip over the Pittsburgh's Indy game. I can't tell what Pittsburgh team's going to show up. There's no reason why Pittsburgh should go into Indy and win this game, but for some reason it may happen, so I'm going to stay clear of that. Denver, Detroit, I'm going to come back to that as my coin flip game. Okay? I'm not going to take that. I'm going to go by the coin. I got this toonie here. And for you guys that are non-Canadian and don't know what a toonie is, on the toonie, it's a $2. Instead of a $2 bill, we have a $2 coin. At one side is a polar bear. Yes, very typical, stereotypical for Canada. And the other side is the Queen of England, who recently passed away. So very soon I expect Prince Charles to be on my toonie. That didn't sound good. But Prince Charles will be there soon, I bet. We'll get back to that later. So we're going to move on to Sunday. The first game we're going to touch is the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Now, I've learned, or I should learn, and I probably should learn some more. The bad teams find bad ways to lose. But I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons anyway at -3. The Carolina Panthers are so bad, so disfigured. I'm going to say disfigured. Yeah, it's like a disfigurement. Bryce Young is not developing in any way at the moment. Don't know what their game plan is. Against the Saints, they clearly had opportunities to run the ball, and because the times they did may have been effective, and they went away from it. 4th and 1s, and they got Bryce Young in shotgun with no running threat. So combined, the fact that Bryce Young is struggling to develop, and then add in the coaching staff, I think is lost. The Atlanta Falcons got something to play for. I think they squeeze out a victory, 4 points or more, or many more. They're not as bad as Carolina. Carolina is just a level below everybody else in the NFL. And thanks to them, the Chicago Bears will have the first overall pick. Atlanta won week 1 over the Carolina Panthers, 24-10. So it wasn't pretty, but Desmond Ridder at that time got the job done. He'll have another opportunity here in week 15. Bears coming off a huge win against the Detroit Lions, heading to Cleveland, and Joey Flacco, Super Bowl champion Joey Flacco. Browns 3.5-point favorites. I think the Bears traditionally play the Lions well. I do not see this happening in Cleveland. And then the roller coaster goes the other way, where it's no question that the Bears will chase that first overall pick and take on a quarterback, because I think Myles Garrett, the Detroit or the Cleveland defense, is going to give Justin Fields a hard time. I don't think he's going to be able to run out of the pocket like he did against the Detroit Lions. I think we got a different ball game here. And Joey Flacco keeps it up. 300-plus yards, threw for 3 touchdowns against Jacksonville, 2 the previous week in the loss against the Rams. But Flacco has enough weapons on that offense to push away from the Bears. They just knocked off the Jaguars, who are a better team than the Bears, by 4 points. Why would this be any different now that Chicago's coming in? So 3.5, no problem. Cleveland all the way. Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. Over-under is 37.5, and I like the over, but here's what we need to know. C.J. Stroud, questionable, concussion protocol. The odds are he's not going to play. In Houston, looking at the situation, probably wouldn't take any chances with their franchise quarterback, which is a shame because they're in playoff contention. So that may change. Maybe that philosophy will change because they are in playoff contention. But right now, it might be David Mills under the helm. And even Nico Collins with a calf injury, star wide receiver for the Houston Texans, is questionable. So that's two big losses, obviously, on the offense. And then Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins, I talked about earlier. These guys got chemistry. So 37.5, it might. I say that this game's going over. I see a big game between Will Levis and Hopkins once again. And, Henry had 2 touchdowns, a lot on goal line, first and goals. So I think that formula works. I think they're going to be putting up points. And I think David Mills, with what they have in Houston, could at least put up a few touchdowns. The Tennessee defense is not lights out. So we'll see what happens there. So I like the over 37.5. Now here we go with the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. 8.5-point favorites are the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill is questionable. You could see the impact when he was not in the game against the Tennessee Titans to when he was in the game and came back, 2 big catches, and then couldn't get out there in the final series. So this potential NFL MVP is absolutely critical to this Miami success if they want to do anything in the playoffs. And frankly, they kind of look lost offensively without him. But I think the week to prepare, knowing how much they will or not have him, is going to help against the New York Jets team where, yeah, they smoked the Houston Texans, in the poor weather. But Zach Wilson's not having another 300-yard game. I'm telling you right now. He's going to be in a hot weather situation in Miami. Crowd's going nuts. He is going to fold like Zach Wilson does. He is going to fold like a little bitch in the Miami Heat. Okay? That's what's going to happen. And the Dolphins, I think, score at least 20-something points, and the Jets put up maybe 10 points. But I think they pass the 8.5 points. Take Miami. Last game on the chart before we go to the coin flip game. The Dallas Cowboys, frauds, take on the Buffalo Bills. Trending up. And the Cowboys are lights out offensively at home. Something about their turf, something about that Jerry in the stands that really gets them going. Bills, well, Josh Allen looks like he's dropping dimes, man. So this is a big game. Big game. Over under 50.5, and guess what? I'm taking the under. I think it's going to play out more like the Kansas City Buffalo game where, some drives turn into turnovers, punts where you didn't want them, penalties. And I don't know the exact weather situation yet in Buffalo. And we're talking about a 4 o'clock game in Buffalo on a Sunday afternoon, mid-December. I'll take my odds of going the under on this one. 50.5. How about them Cowboy frauds? All right. So let's go to the coin flip. We go back to Saturday matchup, Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions. Right off the bat, I was thinking, okay, Detroit, it's got to recover, right? And then I'm thinking Denver finds a sneaky way to stay in ball game. Sean Payton has a good game plan. So we're going to go to the coin flip. So, as I said, there's a polar bear on one side for tails and the queen on the other for heads. So since Detroit's at home, we're going to go for heads and Denver is tails. So here we go. So if it lands on heads, obviously I'm going to take Detroit at 4.5 and then Denver if it lands on tails. Here we go. Are you ready? We have heads. We are going Detroit Lions on Saturday. It's circled. That means it's official. So, just to recap. We got the Bengals, 3.5-point favorites to win over Minnesota Saturday. With coin flip game, we have Detroit, 4.5-point favorites to win, thanks to the coin. Atlanta, Sunday, 3-point favorites to win over Carolina. We're taking Atlanta. Cleveland covers 3.5 points at home against Chicago. Over 37.5 in the Houston Tennessee game, despite injuries on the Houston side of the ball offense. Jets and Miami take on the Dolphins. 8.5-point favorites, but no worries for Miami. They cover. And the Buffalo Bills host the Dallas Cowboys. I like this game to go 50.5 points under the total. So that's it. Go, end this podcast. Write it down. Pass it along. Send me some comments on Overrated Experience, a Twitter site, Overrated EXPR2. And we'll talk to you later. The pleasure's all been yours. You'll hear from me. Hope to hear from you, of course. But, of course, you want to hear from me later this week when we look at props. So, Overrated Experience, Sports, and Sports Betting Club podcast is out. And a shout out to H. Dilla, just a brand new father out there. So congratulations to him, new member to the family. Alexander, welcome to the team. Overrated Experience is over and out. Bye-bye.